CSICon.
That's what it stands for.
This is what it means right here. Committee for Skeptical Inquiry Conference. This is specifically 2019. It is not crime scene investigation, if anybody was confused. It's really kind of hard to look up this conference online because you put in CSICon and it's always crime scene investigation conference. It does help if you say specifically Las Vegas, which is where it's held, but... Huh?
CSI was in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah. What do I got next? Okay, me. I'm a board member here at HCSV. I'm also a skeptic and artist. There is my selfie portrait, as I call it. I'm not actually affiliated with CSICon. I just went. And it was fun, so I thought other people here would be interested in it, so I decided to come and let everybody know about it. Before we get into my actual talk, just want to point out, it's February 2nd, or 02/02/2020, which is the palindrome. Has nothing to do with CSICon, but I thought it was rather humorous, but it's the same forward and backwards if you write it out like that. And it's the same regardless of whether or not you put the month or the day first.
I like it, thank you.
Yeah, so.
Put the year first.
If you put the year, it actually still works, doesn't it? Yeah. Just different. Doesn't look exactly the same. Okay. So, CSICon. This took me a little bit to figure out, but CSICon is hosted by the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, which is a program under the Center for Inquiry, which is CFI. So I never could figure out why CFI's conference is called CSICon. This is how it works. So the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry is just basically like a subgroup of CFI, for anybody wondering. I wish they'd change it to CFICon, though, because it'd be much easier to look it up online. What else? Okay, so a little quick history. I don't want to go into this too deeply, and I also don't know all the details, but CSICon was actually preceded by PsyCop conferences. So I forgot what PsyCop exactly stands for, but it's...
Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal.
Right, exactly. It's not quite the same as Committee for Scientific Inquiry.
Does it have anything to do with the Skeptic magazine?
Yes and no, it's kind of related. So does it have anything to do with the Skeptic magazine? I believe Skeptic magazine is part of CFI, but I think it's a different group under CFI. I don't know the details about that. I'm not a board member or anything on CFI, so I don't know all the details of how that works. But this was their previous conference before CSI, Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, changed its name. And they did it from 1983 to 2005, and it wasn't at a specific location. They moved, it was mostly around the US, but I think they did it in a couple other countries. I didn't follow it very closely. But after 2005, they stopped for a while, and then they came back and started again in 2011 in New Orleans, and this was really the first time it was CSICon, as opposed to PsyCop conference, so it's CSICon. But again, it still moved around at first. Finally, it found its home in Las Vegas, where it's been since 2016, after the Amazing Meeting ended. So, does everybody know what the Amazing Meeting is? Or anybody? Okay. So, Amazing Meeting was a conference that was I think it was created by the amazing Randy. Does everybody know who that is? Yes. The famous skeptic and magician. So he ran that meeting for a number of years, and he's basically retired now, and they ended up stopping the Amazing Meeting, also known as TAM, by the initials, and in 2015, and that's when CSICon kind of like took the same spot, same or similar date. So it was really confusing. Originally, I thought that basically CSICon had taken over from TAM, but that really didn't happen. It was TAM, the Amazing Meeting stopped, and then CSICon, which was already going, it was already a thing, just decided to stay at Las Vegas at that point and continue on from there. And apparently 2016, the first time they were in Las Vegas, was the first time I attended CSICon, and I've only been a few times. 2019 was actually my third time, but I missed a year since 2016. So, any questions about the history that I can possibly answer, because I don't know all the history of it? Okay, moving on. So, where? Okay, so not these flamingos, it's this flamingo is where the actual conference was held. The Flamingo Hotel and Casino. I don't have any shots of the casino, but they have their regular conference room. CSICon will move around a bit from hotel to hotel in Las Vegas. It's always a big casino. So let's see. Flamingo, I don't have a lot of details of what happened, but I did actually went around. They actually do have flamingos at the Flamingo, which is important. This is not a great shot, but I couldn't get any closer, and my camera doesn't really zoom, but there are a couple flamingos in this shot. But this was like a whole like garden/jungle type area, so they had stuff like a waterfall going on. You can see there's some stuff down here in the water, and this other water, you can kind of get a better idea of what's going on here. But as I said, it's like this whole like jungle area in the middle of the Flamingo. But here's a nice close photo. Nice big koi fish that are just swimming around this whole little area they had. And of course they have some ducks swimming around. It was fun. Anything else? So I had to put this slide in here because Hunter is here today. The first two times I went to CSICon in Vegas, I drove. One time was with Hunter, and the second time I drove alone. And it's a really long drive. If anybody's driven from here to Vegas, it takes a long time, and certain portions of it are kind of hilly. Got to drive through some mountains. So this year, I should say last year, 2019, I decided to fly. I strongly recommend flying over driving. It takes a lot less time. It's, the flying's still a little annoying, but because you have to go through all the security and everything. But it was maybe half a day if you add in all of the security stuff and checking in and picking up everything afterwards. It was quite a bit faster, quite a bit nicer. And I assumed I didn't actually get a free ride to the Flamingo. I ended up taking a taxi, but I'm sure there's probably a way I could have done it to get a free ride over there and back, but it all worked out. So next time, go to Vegas, fly. What else do we have? So getting to the actual CSICon, the conference itself, the 2019 schedule, this is a very basic overview of the schedule. And it starts off with, it's not actually any talks the first couple days. There are workshops on Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday through Sunday, and actually Sunday's like a half day. Friday through Sunday is all the talks and other interesting stuff. Like Friday evening there is a magic show. And Saturday was a 50s party, which I didn't go to, but Hunter did. He can talk about it when I get to that slide. What else? So, workshops. So I ended up skipping Wednesday. Wednesday, they only had one workshop. I think it was, not positive, I think it might be the Skeptic's Toolbox. I didn't write it down. It was one workshop. I didn't feel like it was worth it to go for just one extra day for one workshop. And I think it was the Skeptic's Toolbox, which I've done before. And if you haven't done it before and haven't done anything like it, I would recommend it. It's basically where you're taking something like a paper or a news article or something, and in a group you're basically debunking it and why it's a bad article for whatever reason, and then you kind of present it to the rest of your group. It's a fun exercise, but once I've done it once, I didn't feel like it was necessary to go back. So instead, I went to a couple of Thursday workshops. Now they had 4 workshops on Thursday with 2 going at the same time at any given time. So I was only able to go to 2 total workshops, which I think is fine. There were some of them that I think I've seen before or something similar, so I wasn't too worried about missing them. But the 2 that I ended up going to, if I remember correctly, was asking good questions. That was the first workshop, and the second one was the investigators. The investigators in the afternoon, asking good questions in the morning. And the asking good questions one, I hate to say I don't remember the details anymore. I remember it was a pretty good workshop. It was kind of about like what questions do you ask somebody if you're a skeptic and you're asking somebody who's non-skeptical about some particular topic. What are the questions you should be asking them, and how you should be asking questions, which is pretty important because you don't want to get somebody into sort of a defensive mindset, but you still want to interrogate. That's not even the right word. what they're thinking. So
Specific advice?
that's the problem. I don't remember the specific advice anymore. In that workshop, we did. I think we broke off into little groups, and then somebody had some topic that they decided to take on, and then everybody else was supposed to ask them using this question method, which I don't remember anymore, about it. It is an interesting workshop, but it was right at the beginning of the conference. So the next one, the investigators, that one was similar kind of idea where we actually have an actual thing we're doing, but it wasn't about good questions. It was about, say you have some sort of paranormal activity or thing that happened, and you want to, as a skeptic, you want to figure out, is this actually paranormal? What questions do you ask? How do you figure it out? And the really fun thing about that particular workshop is they actually came up with 2 real-life paranormal events. And the entire workshop was broken into 2 groups, and one would work on one of the events, and the other one would work on the other one. And then on top of that, they had special people who were basically actors. They were acting like people who were involved with the event, so you could actually go and question them and try to figure out what happened. So that was fun, and then even though the whole workshop was split into 2, each side also broke down into smaller little groups to work on it. And that was fun. I remember the particular event that we had. I don't want to go into too much detail in case they reuse that exact same one again. I want you guys, if you do go, I want you guys to have fun and do it yourself. But the particular one, it was, to me, as soon as I saw it, I knew it was going on. I knew exactly what the event was. And the only problem was basically the details. It was obviously not paranormal, but trying to figure out the details of why things were happening exactly when they're happening, stuff like that. That was really the work of it. Yeah, and that one was fun, and then we kind of ran out of time because there was so much to talk about and go over. But I strongly recommend that one if you guys end up going and seeing it a different time. What else? So that was workshops. Those are the first couple days. And then, so Friday, we actually start with real talks. And I actually coming back, I don't think I had it. Yeah, there was on Thursday one talk in the evening, late evening, and it was the official open of the conference. And I don't remember what it was. So I didn't write down the name of the talk. I think I actually went to it. I don't actually remember. The problem is with CSICon is there's just so many talks and so many people going over totally different but related skeptical and science type things. It's really hard to remember everybody or even like a small number of them. So I'm just putting up like a couple of particularly interesting people or famous people from each of the days. This one on Friday, there's just so many people. But does everybody know who Michael Mann is, or specifically Michael E. Mann? He is the famous climate scientist, I guess you could say climatologist. He's sitting, there's a picture of him with the trees, and it's specifically about the tree rings. And I don't remember the details, but he had this whole thing about figuring out what the climate was based on the rings of really old trees. And that kind of blew up into a whole thing at one point. Certain climate skeptics, which are not real skeptics, really deniers, decided that was all wrong. And anyways, it was a whole thing. But he's always great. He talked at lunch, and the lunch is a VIP lunch thing. And it was a special lunch that you have to pay in addition to the rest of CSICon. So I think this is the only thing that I actually paid extra to go see, because Michael Mann's talk's always very, very interesting. The particular talk was, of course, about climate change, but with an emphasis on, hey, things are really bad, but we can still do stuff to fix, or at least not keep the worst of climate change from happening. That's a very condensed version of the talk. If I can find some of these talks online, I'll try to put them on the meetup or link to them on the meetup or something, so everybody can go back and check them out. And then, of course, Richard Dawkins, as I mentioned, he was in the regular group of talks. I think he was the last talk on Friday. And, of course, it was a good talk. I don't remember, again, I don't remember all the details. It was several months ago. But if you guys can ever see Richard Dawkins talk in person, it's great. All about science and stuff and skepticism and things. So what else? But Friday evening we had a special event with Piff the Magic Dragon. So this is Piff over here dressed as a dragon. The dog in the middle is Mr. Piffles. And the showgirl is Jade, is Piff the Magic Dragon's assistant. And it's basically your regular magic show that you'd have at Vegas, except that it's dragon themed, but not really. He's just dressed as a dragon, and his dog is dressed as a dragon. But otherwise, it's a funny comedy magic show. I guess he was actually on America's Got Talent at one point and ended up losing. So his whole sales pitches, he lost on America's Got Talent. But that was fun. And then on to Saturday talks. Again, there were a bunch of talks on Saturday, a bunch of really interesting ones with various scientists and skeptics of various sorts. On Saturday, there was another VIP luncheon. I think this was actually officially the VIP luncheon with a number of particularly important, famous people at the talks. I did not go to that one because it was really expensive. I want to say it was like $400 or something to go to that VIP luncheon. But they had great people. They actually had these two people, Julia Sweeney and John Delancey there, and they also had Richard Dawkins at that luncheon. And there's somebody else, I can't remember at the moment. And I'm sure there was plenty of other people that are at that luncheon. So I skipped that one, went to other talks. So John Delancey, does everybody know who he is? Yes, he played Q on the Star Trek Next Generation series and a number of other, he's probably most famous for that, but he's done some other work. He, at the CSICon, his talk was about his involvement in the community, but I think his big thing was he is working on a play, and I looked it up. He said I was unclear whether or not it was a radio play, where it was specifically supposed to be on the radio or just voice, or if it was an actual stage play. Because when I originally heard of it, it sounded like it was a stage play. But anyways, it's doing one or the other on the Dover trial. And does everybody know about that trial at all? The one that made it up to the Supreme Court, where I think it was Dover, Pennsylvania. The school, I don't know if I don't think it was the whole school. One of the schools in Dover, Pennsylvania, was trying to keep evolution from being taught in school. I think that's the way it went. They were trying to teach intelligent design? Okay. It was one of those, I never remember what it was. I just remember that they had, like, the kids made a display of evolution and they tore it down, and that was like a whole issue. And but anyway, so apparently John Delancey has worked with some people to make this into an actual play, and it'll either be, on the radio or a podcast, or done on a stage. So watch out for that. We'll try and get that. Maybe if a speaker is missing sometime, if we can get a video of it, we can play it here or something. The other one on Saturday, which I believe was probably the best talk of the entire conference, was Julia Sweeney. Does anybody know who she is? I think most people know, but okay, there's a few people who don't. She was on Saturday Night Live. Played a character called Pat for a long time. I think that's her most famous character, but I think she did a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. After leaving Saturday Night Live, I don't know if she did many movies, but she started doing a number of like one-person stage plays. One of them is called God Said Ha, and there's another one that was Letting Go of God, right? Both, atheist related. So Julia's talk at CSICon was actually another one-person play that she was working on, basically comedy routine. It was only a part of it. It wasn't the whole thing. She said she hasn't finished it all, but and we only had about an hour of her time. But it was really funny, lots of fun. Strongly recommend that as well.
She's been at a couple of AHA conferences.
She's been at the AHA conferences as well? Okay. Did not know that. Was she really good?
Pretty good. I have one or two DVDs of her.
Okay, yeah.
I'll share.
So that leaves us with Sunday. No, 50s Party. 50s Party was Saturday night. I didn't go, so I can't really tell you anything about it. Hunter did go. Do you want to talk about it? Should we pass you a microphone for a moment?
Yeah.
Do we know where the microphone is? I skipped a 50s Party, partially because I didn't think it was a little too much for me, but I definitely enjoyed getting some sleep while the 50s Party was going.
So it was very fun. They had a lot of decorations, and pretty much everyone came in costume, all 50s themes costumes. In previous years, they had done a Halloween party, but since this one wasn't very close to Halloween, they decided to go 50s party, which basically meant everyone acted like it was a Halloween party, and they had, Halloween style, 50s style costumes. So it was really fun. There was a big costume contest, lots of food, great music. There was like a live singer. I don't think it was a live band, but it was a live singer, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, it was very fun. I highly recommend whatever party they have, whether it's a Halloween party or whatever other party. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Back to you, Matt.
Yeah, the other reason I didn't do the 50s Party is it cost more to go. Not as much as the VIP luncheon. It wasn't that much, but it did cost more. And I think, Hunter, was this the arch that was there? This is not a photo from the actual party, but I think some of the stuff in here was actually at the party, right?
I think they had all those decorations, but they were spread out. In the
Yeah. So.
Okay, well, Matt, make sure I get the mic to somebody when you're talking.
Oh, that's right.
I think they did have all those decorations, but they were spread out among the room.
Right. I should remember that. And also, I've been trying to be good about repeating what people are saying, but I'm missing it a few times. So, Saturday night to Sunday. Sunday was a short day. We only went to about noon. And they had what were called the paper sessions, which are not the regular talks, I should say. They're shorter talks, usually by scientists or people who are actually working on a particular area and want to kind of present either what they've just researched that they've recently completed, or research that they're still currently working on, or something interesting like that. Or not necessarily research. There was one that was just on making popular skeptic videos, I guess you can say. I don't remember the name, but the guy would post various videos of either skepticism or like science toys or something like that online, and apparently made a big following on Twitter. So I didn't put any of the actual people from the paper sessions. There are quite a number of them, but it was still a pretty interesting group of talks. And then the final talk was by Brian Greene, a physicist. Does anybody know who he is?
Yeah.
Okay, can you explain who he is? I don't know him pretty well. Okay, Hunter's going to explain because he knows him much better.
He's a physicist, and he's written several books on like kind of bleeding edge physical, like theoretical physics. He wrote a book called The Hidden Reality, which was all about the various different theories that could lead to multiverses and how to interpret them and what the consequences would be, and how we could test for each of them. He has a very good way of taking very complicated subjects and making them very simple to understand. So he's a fantastic author. He's written several books. I highly recommend them.
Yeah. Do you have particularly about Brian Greene? Okay. Because I'm nearly done, so we can hold quite other questions.
He is the string theorist, if you have heard of string theory. So basically why the universe is expanding and the dark energy and dark matter. So they try to address that because standard theory doesn't explain everything. So he's one of the proponents of the string theory. And he's a professor at Columbia University. And he also leads the World Science Fair in the whole of New York City during the month of May.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for finishing up my talk for me. No. I did put him on here not only because he was the very last speaker, but he also had a pretty interesting talk about linking string theory with black holes, and it was really beautiful, like slides. He had all this moving stuff. It was great. It was a really good presentation. I was pretty impressed. So that was pretty much the entire CSICon. So of course after that, I flew home because flying is so much better than driving. So moving on to next year, I found this image about the 2020 CSICon. So if anybody's interested, the 2020 CSICon will be again in Las Vegas, but it will be at the Westgate, not the Flamingo. So we won't have nice flamingo plushies next time. And apparently it's from October 15th to 18th, so save the date. Is anybody else thinking of going, maybe? Got a couple people. Of course, Hunter. Yeah. And if you want more information on CSICon, go to this website. This is actually where I got most of the information for the talk as well. Clearly, I could have put a little bit more in. But I think it is still set up for the 2019 CSICon. It still has the entire schedule for last year, which was really helpful for me, so I could see what actually happened what day, and because it's been a little while and I kind of forgot. But hopefully they will update it for this year's 2020's CSICon at some point, once they figure out what the schedule is. Yeah, I'm really early. There are a few other things I can go over, but I guess we could move on to questions real quick.
This is a basic question. About how many people went?
I don't know. It's hundreds of people. I never figured out like the total count. I'm guessing like around 500. It was definitely less than 1,000, but it was hundreds. Yeah, it was one like really big room where most of the talks were held. And I never sat and tried to count or anything. Yeah.
Well, being a born skeptic and a subscriber to the Skeptic magazine, I don't understand what the hell you talked about there. The Skeptic magazine covers all kinds of scams and this sort of thing. Is that what you guys were talking about?
A lot of it was covering...
Well, for example, what were some of the things you discussed that were skeptical?
That were skeptical? Yeah. Well, the first one was like...
What'd you do, just go there for the entertainment?
That's part of it. That's kind of what I missed was we did do some other stuff outside of CSICon, but I can go over that in a minute. But for specifically what we were talking about, skeptical things, for example, at the workshop, as I said, we did some stuff on paranormal things that people were claiming something was paranormal and it wasn't, and we had to describe, or had to figure out why or what was happening, why it isn't paranormal. Other things, actual talks, they covered all sorts of things from, I think there was at least one on vaccine, anti-vax people, and
Dawkins was there, right?
and yes, Richard Dawkins was there. He talked about.
You mean you forgot?
Yes, I've forgotten Richard Dawkins' talk. It was science, and I don't remember the details of his. It was more of, covered multiple things. I wish we'd scheduled this closer to the actual event so I could remember more of the details.
Fights going.
But yeah,
Okay.
so lots of stuff.
Any other questions?
Hopefully more questions.
I wanted to put in a word for the Humanist conference, which is very similar to what you described.
Yeah.
It's in Miami this year. Is that right? And I think it's in August. And they are a lot of fun. And we got a lot of the same people. And yeah, I just wanted to put in a word for it. We're certainly going. We usually get a pretty good contingent from our group.
Yeah. So I just want to point out the Humanist conference is in Miami in August. So if you're going, be prepared for that.
It's indoors, though.
It's in, okay, good. I grew up in Florida, not in Miami, much further north, and I can assure you that's going to be really hot and humid. Yeah.
And rating.
And raining.
So I wanted to talk about the price. Can you go over what is the pricing like for CSICon?
I don't remember. No, I think it was. I don't remember the exact numbers. It was 200, I think, if you signed up early for the conference itself. And then I want to say it was like for that first luncheon, it was like 50 or something. And I know like the conference, if you wait later, the price goes up as most of these conferences do. And it was over 300 something, I think, at the max. And I feel like that's not terribly expensive for that kind of conference. But like things like the luncheon was very expensive. The VIP luncheon with all the other people who were talking there. was as much as probably the rest of the conference. And the 50s party was like $50 as well, I think. It was not a lot, but it was a little bit. It starts adding up when you keep adding all these other things. Huh? 25 per person? Okay. All in all, it was probably the hotel room was more expensive than the entire conference. And it wasn't terribly expensive, but still, it was a couple, I think. I actually stayed at the Flamingo itself, and I got my room early enough that it was quite a bit cheaper, but it was still like, it was over 100, I think it was nearly $200 a night or something, which was, yeah, more expensive than anything else. And then, of course, the most expensive thing there is gambling. Don't do that. I did not gamble. I think, Hunter, you did like $10 or something.
Immediately lost it.
Immediately lost it, yeah. Okay.
Dana St. George. Yeah, well, I wonder if there are any particularly interesting and perplexing paranormal events that you dissected and, decided. Okay.
No, there wasn't. So I don't want to go over the workshop in detail in case somebody goes to it later and they use the exact same one, because you really want to work on it yourself. Again, that one was as soon as I saw it, I knew what was going on. The other one, the other team was doing it wasn't as obvious right off the bat. It still turned out to be a pretty simple thing that took some research to figure out. But again, I don't want to go into the details on what those are in case people want to go. I don't remember any paranormal stuff this year, but a previous year, one of the, I don't even remember all the details on that one. There was a particularly interesting one about one of the, I forget what they call it, something devil of some place, and he talks about how they did all this investigation, and a particular thing I remember is the devil supposedly had a face like the Ace of Spades was the whole deal, and do you know what it turned out to be? It was an owl. It was a barn owl. If you look at the face of a barn owl, it has kind of like a pointed nose and big eyes. It looks kind of like a spade. And it turns out that's what it was. Some people were scared at night, and this owl flew at them, and somehow it totally evolved into this devil creature. But I don't remember anything like that in 2019. There was a lot of stuff like anti-vaxxers, and if anybody knows Goop, there was at least one talk that was just trashing them. It was great. Goop. Gwyneth Paltrow, yeah. Is Gwyneth Paltrow's lifestyle brand, right? It's her company where she's selling all sorts of weird stuff, including these jade eggs. I don't know if you heard about that thing, and I don't even remember what else. Yeah, probably Himalaya salt. Okay.
Were there any topics on cryptozoology and attempts to investigate that?
I know I've seen it, and we've done it in the past. I don't remember if there was one this past year. I did miss a number of talks, and I may have just missed that talk, or I don't remember the specifics, because usually somebody talks about Bigfoot. That's always a fun one. Somebody trying to search for Bigfoot. But yeah,
Not this year, though.
I don't remember this year,
Right.
or past year. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Wow.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, I want to, and we still have a lot of time. Some other things I want to go over that I wasn't able to add into this slide presentation. Outside of CSICon, we did some other things, including we went to see the Blue Man Group. Has anybody seen that one before? I think most people know kind of what it is. These three guys that are painted all in blue, and they they don't talk the entire time, but they're making music and doing all sorts of sketches and funny things. And that was great. It was not at the Flamingo. It was at Luxor, so we had to go over there and do it. And that was one of the reasons we missed one of the talks or something. I think we had to leave a little early to get there. And Hunter has the painting that they made on stage during the show.
Tell them
But-
how they made the painting.
So how they made the painting, and it was a thing where they had, it was a 16 by 20 canvas, and they were doing stuff, and he was like putting paint in his mouth and blowing onto the canvas, but somehow he had the canvas spinning, so everything ended up in a swirl. It was pretty cool. And then he signed it afterwards, right? But all he did to sign it was he
Sign it by
put his hand on his head, right, which had the blue paint on it, and then he put his entire palm print on the back, right? So that's the signature, and I guess it never actually dries, right? It just, this is like wet paint the whole time, yeah. And
I guess you're not going to tell us he sold it for $1.5 million.
no. What else happened? We went on the, I don't know if you've seen pictures of Vegas. It would have been nice to put this in here, but there's this giant Ferris wheel in Vegas, and that's called the High Roller, and we went on that one night. Was it after the Blue? I think it was after the Blue Man Group, actually, or was it a different night? It was really late at night. I remember that. It was like we were there at like midnight or something, and it's like 400 or 500 feet in the air. It's way, way up there. It's over most of the buildings there. And when you get to the top, it takes, I think it's like a half an hour all the way around, or 45 minutes. It's a really long time just to go all the way around. And when you're at the top, you can see over almost all the buildings, and everything is a great view. It's entirely enclosed. You're not worried about falling out, but they have nice windows on the sides. And I guess some of them, if you pay a little extra, you actually can go in one of them that has a bar in the thing as you're going up. We didn't do that. You could get drinks beforehand. I don't drink, so I got some water. And the Flamingo is right next to, if you go out one of the side entrance, there's this thing called the Link. Well, the Link is the casino. It's like a Link alley or something. I don't remember what they call it. But it's the alley between the buildings, the big casinos. And there's a bunch of restaurants down there and fun activities and things. And going across, one end of it is the High Roller, but going across the top of this whole alley is a zip line. And you periodically see people go flying across on top of you. And sometimes they're like sitting, and sometimes they're like in a Superman position, like flying across. It's pretty fun.
What's a zip line?
What's a zip line? That's where they have the line that goes across, and you have like a pulley or something that you're hung on, and just slide right across. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it. Is there anything else that we did I'm forgetting about? You're getting a microphone.
I got the saltiest margarita I've ever had.
Oh yeah, I forgot. So that was the other one I wanted to point out. At one of the corners of the Flamingo was this bar and restaurant called Margaritaville. And everybody knows Jimmy Buffett, right? I mean, most people know who he is. He has a song called Margaritaville, and that's what the bar restaurant was named after. And the whole thing is has references to Jimmy Buffett songs in it all over the place. I didn't put the photo in, but I have a photo of the lost shaker of salt, if anybody remembers that. It's actually there. And Hunter got a margarita at Margaritaville, which makes sense. And of course, he asked for as much salt as they could possibly put on the margarita. They did not disappoint. The salt on the margarita glass was from the rim all the way to the stem. Literally the entire part of the glass. And somewhere we have a photo of that. I guess not. It was pretty impressive. We went there a couple times. They had some good. I think I got a cheeseburger in paradise, of course. That was pretty good. Yeah. And remember, don't gamble there. You lose your money. Is there any more questions? Yeah, okay. Got a question over here.
So are you more of a skeptic now than you were before?
I'm not sure if I could be more of a skeptic, but I learned a lot and learned like how to be skeptical and like things people are doing in the skeptic community, all these idiots online. There are a lot of people pushing things that are not true online. So it's just, I'm always surprised. I go to these kind of things and some other stuff they do, like the podcast, and there just seems to be an endless number of people who are pushing stuff that's just not true. And it's obvious if you're a skeptic, you immediately know that this is BS. You don't have to do any research for it. But people put in a lot of time to do research on some of these things and pointing out scams and things like that.
Did they go into...
You wait for the mic.
I was just wondering if they went into any of the specific scams that you get on the telephone. You know.
Telephone scams? I don't...
There's usually one where you've been mentioning someone's will who you don't know. Or...
Yeah, I mean, there's so many telephone scams. It's crazy. It's your will that don't know. There's the Nigerian prince one. It has a different... There's a number. I don't remember what the number is.
A bunch of Nigerians. It's a major source of income.
Really, yeah. It's surprising it's actually from Nigeria. I always think that, like, why would it have to be from Nigeria? But it always is.
I think it's just a major industry there.
Yeah. There was a big one recently, and it's actually probably going to come up soon, was the IRS scam ones, where they call you up and say, you owe this such and such money to the IRS. Give us, your credit card now, or something like that. And that is very much not true. It's, usually not the IRS. You want to contact them directly if you have any questions about that. But there's just, I don't think anybody specifically went over phone scams, but there was all sorts of other scams and stuff people went over, like Goop. Throwing that one out again.
Tell me about Goop.
Yeah, I will tell you about Goop sometime.
One good piece of news is that now the phone companies are starting to tell you when things are possible scams.
Yes, they do, and I quite enjoy that. And whenever I get a phone call and it says spam on it, or possible spam, they never say spam. They always say possible spam. I'm immediately just shut it off. And should I wait for a microphone? Yeah, I want to point out on the phone scam thing. The new one I've been getting is, instead of phone scam, have Google stuff. They've been able to do calendar spam. I don't know if anybody else has seen this, where they send a calendar invite to your email, and your email immediately knows that it's spam, so it puts in your spam folder, but they add a calendar invite, and that calendar invite ends up on my calendar, which makes no sense because Gmail clearly knows it's spam. They may have fixed it now or not. Last I checked, they didn't, but...
What kind of clowns they got working over at Google?
I know, seriously. But wait, they have a new one.
For anyone who doesn't know, Matt works at Google.
They have a new one that I've just seen in the past couple of days, where instead of doing... I don't know if the calendar spam was kind of fixed up or what, but now they're sharing a document with me. And I know it's spam because it's in Russian, and I have no idea what it is. But then it notifies my phone that, oh, you got a document we shared with you, and I don't know what it is or anything, but it's clearly spam. That's the new one.
Do you know the refund scam?
I've heard, I don't know specifically which one you're talking about, because I've heard a number of them where, particularly on Craigslist, where they try to buy something from you and want you to, they pay too much and you refund a certain amount of money to them, and they want you to wire it so you can't reverse it. And
it's similar to that. they call you up and say like, oh, we're from Microsoft or whatever, and we owe you money for a refund, and then they have you log into your bank, and they go in and change like the HTML of where it says how much you have in the bank to like, I don't know, like $2,000 extra or something. And then they're like, oh no, we sent you accidentally too much money. Can you go and get us like Google Play cards or Apple iStore cards and send us that money in those cards, in the form of those cards?
Wow.
Yeah.
At some point I need to do a talk about scams and money. And so the problem with using like Apple Play cards and stuff like that, that's what's considered soft money. Some of them aren't. But pretty sure since you can buy them with credit cards, if you did that and sent them somewhere, you can get them actually reversed and get your money back. So that's, but they're probably doing something weird like selling them for cash somewhere and getting the actual hard money. So like obviously if you sell something if you buy something with cash, you can't get your money back for the most part unless it's a reputable vendor. But with credit cards, you can always reverse charges. So it's important things to think about.
Were you told at the conference any good sources to use to verify that something is true or to identify scams or political misinformation?
I think there was one or two talks on political specific political issues, and particularly about news. There was one about how news is reporting stuff really badly and how fake news is getting out. But for sources, there's always Snopes. I don't know if anybody actually brought that up in the at CSICon. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Would you repeat
totally
that?
Forgot about that. So sorry. The guy, one of the founders of Snopes, was there, gave a talk about Snopes and how how they do the research for it. I think it was one of of course they went over the silly scams and stuff, but they also talked about the research behind it. And his name was, I forget.
I think it's David Mickelson.
We think it's David Mickelson. I can't remember. I'm sure if I looked through the whole list, I could find it again. So that was one of them. And then I know the one that was on the news and the fake news mentioned PolitiFact, which is a good, yeah. So those are two good sources. Other than that, I'm not sure. Do you have any other questions? We're finally getting them sent out.
We really love the maybe scam, but we did have one call that we were expecting, and it was not scam, and they announced it as scam. We wouldn't have, if we didn't know that it was coming, we wouldn't have answered it.
Yeah, so it actually showed spam on your phone. Yeah.
Likely, yeah.
I've never noticed that, but then again, I never answer it when it says spam, so maybe I missed a few calls that were real calls. I don't know.
In those cases, I think they're just looking for VoIP calls where
really?
where the phone number is manufactured, maybe.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily spam, but they're possible spam.
Right, right. So for people who don't know, VoIP is voice over IP, and that is a big source of scam calls because they can basically put whatever number they want on it and spoof other numbers. And so when you before they started doing the spam thing, you may remember getting phone calls from your own phone number. That was one of the ways they were doing it, and other tricks like that.
Thank you. Hi, I've never received one of those spam
Really?
notices on the phone, and I'm just wondering, is that, I still have a landline as well as a cell phone, and I'm just wondering, is this something that applies more to cell phones and not to landlines?
Yeah, it's the cell phones that are actually showing that it's a scam caller, and I know it's on Android. I assume they have it on iPhone. I don't know which one it came out on first, but you get scammed likely on landlines as well. Okay, you probably have to have a special phone or something because it has to show some text or something to inform you. Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to add the same thing. In Florida, my landline and cell phone service both identify scam likely.
Oh, wow. I don't have a landline anymore, so I don't know about a landline. It's kind of old tech. I don't think except when I was like in college and we like had to have a landline and we shared it with my roommates. After that, we all had cell phones. It just made sense to everybody handle their own cell phones and never had a landline since.
Yeah, Jerry Grass. We have a landline. It doesn't have any ability to notify us of scams, but we've definitely gotten scams. At least one, but I think more than one was very serious in terms of they're threatening you with the almost immediate arrest if you don't cooperate. So.
Oh yeah, that's the FBI scam or
something
whatever
like
they called
yeah.
it. Where
Or maybe IRS, but some government thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we certainly got hit by the FBI one several times.
I assume you mean the FBI scam, not the actual FBI.
Right. And I will point out to you that from my experience anyway, if you ever want to know, just take the phone number, put it on the web. There are almost always some comments about it.
The IRS will never call you. They only send snail mail.
Yeah. That's so they can, if you have any actual problems, they can extend the time that you haven't paid and they can charge more interest, I assume.
You know that or you're guessing?
I may have had some experience with that in the past, but it's all cleared up. I'm good now.